culture that we're having. I think we're all pretty tired of it. So, yeah, you know, maybe this will distract, right? We're trying to distract from that a little bit. Let's see. So tonight we want to talk about QPI, which is the Quality Parenting Initiative that is kind of getting rolling here in Minnesota. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about how it got started in Minnesota, kind of what we're doing with it here in Scott County, and then some very specific pieces that we're asking foster parents to be involved with for that. But just to kind of help me know a little bit, would folks be willing just to say your name and kind of the community that you come from? I hear a lot about folks here in the office, and I don't always get to put names with faces. So if we could do that, who am I going to pick on? I'm going to pick on Brittany, right over there.
I'm Brittany Simon. This is David Simon. We're from Belle Plaine. So I don't know how long we've been.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah. Do you want to just kind of go along there?
David and Trisha McLeod, Jordan, Minnesota, and bosses at Green Lake.
Great.
Julie Malika, one of the licensors here.
Nancy Hunt, licensor. Kelsey Simon, child protection worker.
Nikki Bauer, child protection worker. Anna Street, licensing intern.
Molly Rabine, licensor.
Let me jump up to you guys.
Okay. Well, Alan and Nancy Sorbeck were from like south between Jordan and Pearl Lake.
Okay. Great.
Michelle Bauer, here in Shakopee.
Angie Letterly, Jordan.
Sean and Kara Colbert, Fire Lake.
Nikki Belter in Shakopee.
You guys.
Boyles, Fire Lake.
Jesse Boyles, Fairley.
Mark Swades, Prior Lake, and my better half will walk in any minute. Beth from Prior Lake.
Great.
Amanda Stam, Savage. Cheryl Moriarty, child protection.
And I'm Trish Mischke, child protection supervisor. I'm Jackie Vagelon, I'm one of the licensors.
Christina Norby, Shakopee.
Phil and Darcy Griffiths, Jordan.
Great. Thank you again so much for coming out tonight. So we'll get started here. See if I can work the technology. All right. So the Quality Parenting Initiative is a strategy that came out of the Youth Law Center. And it's an approach for strengthening foster care by focusing on excellent parenting for children in care within the child welfare system. So kind of the full spectrum of that. So it started back in 2008, and it was launched in Florida and has been implemented in over 70 jurisdictions in 10 states. So each social service agency, or depending on each state how they're organized, they can choose whether or not to participate in this. So as you can see, like California, Florida, Illinois, Louisiana, I'm checking my abbreviations here, Minnesota, Nevada, Ohio, Pennsylvania, there we go, Texas and Wisconsin have chosen to do that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that like every agency within those states have chosen to work on it, at least my understanding of that. And when the QPI initiative is successful, foster parents and biological parents feel like a parenting team. They're really kind of co-parenting that child together. And that's kind of what the goal we would hope for, because we see that, I think I'm getting ahead of myself, oops, that all kids really need excellent parenting. That's going to help them grow and develop in the best way possible. Uh-oh, I didn't do that one. There we go. And the child development and trauma research indicates that children need a constant, consistent, effective parenting to grow and reach the full potential. And if you're co-parenting together, that consistency might be easier to achieve, and the effectiveness might be able to be increased. And then each community must define excellent parenting for itself, so there can be some variability. This is a pretty flexible initiative. It really can be what place each jurisdiction wants it to be. And then also the policy and practice must be changed to align with that definition. So you want folks to be able to be, for the system to change to meet kind of the goals of the QPI. And participants in the system are the best positioned to recommend and implement that change. So folks like you, the parents that we're working with, folks that work within the child welfare system, that's who all we want involved in the Quality Parenting Initiative. There's kind of a delay with that. Oops, now and I'm just going to wait a little just to make sure it doesn't go again. Okay, so here in Minnesota, in kind of 2016, 2017, some of the private agencies that license folks for foster care that are members of a organization, see there it went, organization called Aspire, got together and started talking about QPI. They had heard about it being in other places, and they were curious about it, and wanted to learn more about that. And those private agencies then got together and did a kind of a design day kickoff in June of 2017 to see, well, given that we've learned a little bit about this, how do we get this started in Minnesota? And they kind of started designing that, and then in September or October of 2017, they did some more learning sessions across the communities to get more feedback. And then in October of 2017, they did a big kickoff event. I know some folks from Scott County attended that, and they got folks together to really kind of start to do some of those discussions and develop those strategies about what does the quality parenting in Minnesota look like, and how to improve the experience for children in foster care. Okay, that did change. Okay, so out of that kickoff event and some other kind of subcommittee group work that they came up with, they established these kind of QPI Minnesota values. So children and youth develop and grow through love and support from their families and communities. That's a pretty good start. Foster parents are respectful partners who advocate and collaborate for the well-being of the child or youth and their birth family and relatives. So foster parents are really viewed as part of the team that's kind of helping support the families and the children in the child welfare system. Communities and system partners collaborate and drive best practices and best interests of children and youth. And birth families, relatives, and foster parents connect and create mutually healthy relationships to care for children and youth. It's pretty good values there. So what they realized, like, this is a big undertaking, and so we want to start with some small steps that we can implement across all the different organizations and agencies that want to participate in QPI. So they identified kind of 3 main initiatives to start with, or priorities. The first one is a comfort call to the birth family when a child or youth enters a foster home. And that's something that we're going to talk some more about tonight, because that's a big part of why we asked you to come here and start learning about this. Also, that birth and foster families meet to develop a relationship, share information, and work together to meet the needs of the child or youth that is in care. And then also to integrate the importance of a child and youth's voice into all interactions. So instead of kind of always thinking in the frame of, like, what does the parent need to do or not need to do, to also think about, well, what kind of impact is that having on the child? How does that make them feel? How does that support them? See? Something. All right, so Molly, if I just click on the link, or do we have to go somewhere? Why does it keep kind of going? This way. So we've got a video that kind of talks about, that is someone who's been involved in QPI in, I think it's Louisiana, isn't it?
Tell me what you do and what you have to do.
Well, with QPI, as I'm a foster care worker, so I work with the parents and the children. And with this new QPI program that we're using, it has definitely helped me to grow as a worker. It's like, this is the best thing ever. We're so excited about it. I'm in a smaller parish, Jeff Davis Parish. We're just like 8 workers, but we're part of the Lake Charles region. And we have so much fun with this. It's like, everyone was jealous because they couldn't get the video done today. And it starts from our clerical, then it goes to our investigator, and then usually foster care. Foster care plays a really big part because we work with the foster parents, trying to find a placement for the kids when they come into care. And we work with the parents as well, trying to make them feel. And that was one of the issues that I was having as a worker, trying to satisfy everyone, trying to make sure the foster parent was okay, trying to make sure the child was okay, and making sure the parents was okay. So that was a struggle for me. And with different other trainings, it got better. But after this came along, oh my gosh, it's the best. I'm like, this we can't change. This is what we need. And I attended the conference in New Orleans. And that even was like, oh my gosh, yeah. I'm like, I cannot believe we didn't, have this before. But back to your question. So whenever we receive a removal, find out we have a removal, usually in our office we know about it ahead of time, usually, or whatever. We start with clerical, because clerical starts giving us the information, like the kid's name, date of birth, that kind of thing. And then the investigator will find out who's assigned to the case, and she will get with us, and because it's two ladies in our office, and they will discuss to us about the child or the children, what's going on, how are the parents, and that kind of thing. So with this QPI, we as foster care workers, we sit down with the investigator, and we kind of prep them a little from whenever they go out. And sometimes we may not be able to go out with them to the removal, so we kind of prep them of what they need to tell the parents of, what's going to be going on, that we're going to make sure that once we get to the foster home, we're going to call them to make sure they have a phone available. And sometimes with this new policy with calling them, sometimes they don't have a phone. So what we do sometimes is we will place the kids, and then we'll leave and go back to the parents' home and call the parents from our phone and to talk to the kids to let them know that they're okay. And that has made a big difference, because from that point, the foster child is a little bit better, since they got to hear their parents' voice. But the parents, it works better with us now. And when it comes to the icebreaker meeting that we have, they're excited to meet the foster parents because they was able to talk with them on the phone. So it's like exciting for them to get to meet them. And before, QPI, it was very hard to engage the foster parents and the parents at the initial family visit. It was really hard. We tried this icebreaker. We didn't consider it an icebreaker, but we would try to have an introduction at the first visit. But sometimes it just didn't go well. But now it's going really well, really well. I'm learning things about the kids that I didn't even know about. I'm learning things about the parents, and then I'm even learning about the foster home. Sometimes I placed in this home before, I didn't even know this was going on with the foster dad or foster mom. So it's amazing, and we get excited because we're learning these things, and then sometimes the parent hasn't met the foster care worker yet. So the investigator will come in and do the icebreaker meeting, start it off, introduction, that kind of thing. So it makes the parent feel, even though sometimes the parents are really upset and angry with the investigator because they're the one that initiated the removal, but they still have that, they knowing that they know someone in the room, because it's sometimes their first time meeting me. So even we had one last week, and Miss Lyons, she started it off. She was able to kind of discuss, and me and my supervisor kind of prep her to what it was all about. And she did wonderful. She was like, oh, do you have this? I'm like, well, sometimes, you'll be able to be involved, but sometimes it just be us. But anyway, it went really well. I learned things that the investigator didn't tell me at the initial staffing that we had. So it was lots of fun. And then from there, our court system now in Jeff Davis Parish is even on board with us a little. They're recognizing what we're doing. They're even noticing that the parents' relationship with the agency is better now. Because we did introduce, QPI to them, so they kind of had an idea, but they really wasn't sure about it. And sometimes, they're like, oh, we don't have time to really get to know what this is all about, or, that kind of thing. But now, our two judges, they're, excited about it. They noticed the big difference, because now honestly, when QPI was first introduced it to us, I was like, oh my gosh, more work for us. We don't have enough to get done. But now, it's less work, because we're not supervising as many family visits, because the foster parents are taking over and doing the visits. Now, we will attend some to observe to make sure things is going well, but they're taking over the visits. They're they're making sure that they schedule the visits, and the kids see the siblings, or, mom and dad weekly, or whoever else they may need to visit. So it takes a little, extra, time off of our busy schedule, so we don't have to worry about scheduling a visit. And then sometimes I'm learning about doctor's appointments. I usually find out all my information at the home visits. Some foster parents may text me or call me, before I go out again for the month. But the parents are like, "Oh, we went to so-and-so's appointment today, everything went well." I'm like, "What?" And then I asked the foster parent about it, and she's like, "Yeah, I invited them to come, and it went really well." And this was out me even, letting them know, well, the appointment is scheduled for this day, you may want to attend. And they just did it on their own from this learning everything from the QPI. We also had a few cases in our office that we started transitioning them to going home. And that usually takes a lot of time out of our schedule because, we get them from the foster home. We usually bring them to the bio home and we start, now one of my cases, the last visit was in, the end of April, and the judge gave custody back to mom in May. Well, they did it all on their own. I did go into the home once it got there just to make sure the first few times to make sure that, everybody was settled and that kind of thing. But it was 3 different kids, so the 3 different foster parents got together on a group message with the mom. They didn't even include me in it. But then when I asked them about it, they included me in it. They was like, "Oh, we didn't want to bother you." And they kind of communicated after each visit to see what was going on with the child, like if they was having any type of behavior issues after the visit, that kind of thing, whatever. So it really makes it, because before that wasn't really going on before, QPI was introduced to us. We really didn't have that kind of relationship and connection going on. And then this particular family, they call me, still call me or text me and let me know pictures and let me know how they're doing. And they're saying how they always doubted the agency and, always said bad things about us, and foster parents for sure. Because, they all think that foster parents just want to take their kids and keep their kids and that kind of thing. And she said this particular case changed all that because it was totally different of what she went into. Because when she initially started, when the case was initially open, it was in a different parish. It was transferred to our parish because of caseload adjustments. And she wasn't getting the treatment, and she wasn't getting the knowledge of, what was going on with the QPI. And she didn't realize how different it was from the beginning to when the case came into our office. And so she actually last week, through this, they still work, the foster parents and the children still communicate, and the bio parents. And one of the foster parents' brother is getting married, so they asked for all the kids to be in the wedding. Not just the one kid that they foster, but all 3 kids to be in the wedding. It's because they've been hanging out lately, after the kids went home, communicating. And she just was so excited about that. She was just so happy to tell me that, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe they asked me this." And I'm like, "So you're gonna tell them yes, right?" And she's like, "Yeah, absolutely." So it's fun. It's like fun now. It's exciting. Like sometimes it's rough and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you just can't do this." But knowing that the parents are on board with, trying to work with the foster parents and the foster parents on board, it's just amazing. And then clericals on board, the CI workers on board. Everyone in the office, even the security guard, she's on board. When they walk into our office, it's a smaller office, but she knows all the families. And, our clerical will walk into the visitation room and let them know, "Hey, so-and-so's on their way. You have such a beautiful daughter. I got to meet her, and she's so beautiful. She looks just like you, and that just like brightens their day. Or sometimes we may have cards ready for them, like while waiting for placement, the kids may do like different, cards for their parents, and we hand them the cards before the kids get there and let them know, "Hey, look what, so-and-so did for you." So it's exciting, like it's fun. Like we're excited about icebreaker days. But we have some that don't go as planned, but we try again, and we keep engaging and keep trying until they're like, "Okay, well, they're not gonna give up, so I have no choice but to work with this foster parent." And it works out really well. And also now we're able to give so much information to the foster parent. Before we could only give so much, and they really couldn't do much. They really didn't know much, and they really didn't know how to work with the children because they didn't know a whole lot. But now with us being able to share a whole lot more, it's definitely helping preserve placements. Kids are staying in placements longer now because these foster parents are knowing like what's going on, so they're knowing exactly what type of treatment and care they need to give the kids. So it's just awesome, all in all, from the beginning to the end.
You're totally perfect.
One second, everything was perfect. She said everything perfect. Every so often, like every 2 minutes, her hair will brush against.
Sorry.
Sorry.
turn anyway.
Nice transition.
So that video, in case you didn't catch it at the beginning, is a agency that has obviously embraced QPI and was really just trying to speak to some of the benefits overall of what it means to implement QPI. But she also, if you caught it in the beginning, was talking about what this comfort call is and how that is a benefit. So kind of the primary reason for our training today is to really talk about what is this comfort call, how are we going to implement it here at Scott County, and just talk about that a little bit here. So the purpose behind the comfort call and why it was implemented into QPI is that when children are placed, there's an extreme amount of stress that is happening with the children. They're being separated from their primary caregivers when they have to enter into foster care and go into a new placement. And it is the early stages of that out-of-home placement where you can have a lack of communication and relationship that's established. And so this comfort call is used as a guide to try to help build that together and then create a stronger bond between the parents and the foster parents, and then ultimately be able to co-parent that child together. And then hopefully eliminate some of the stress that happens in that whole entire process. Clicking would make it better. So the goals is obviously to set that stage, to create that partnership of what co-parenting is all about between the birth family as well as the foster family. You're obviously opening the doors to communication. This is just the initial stage of communication. You're going to be starting that. You're going to be introducing yourself with a comfort call, and then hopefully going forward, be able to have all those examples that that woman talked about, to be able to have really good communication and conversations about doctor's appointments. If they are in school and they have an IEP, it's creating that relationship without any tension so that everyone can be on kind of the same ground and in a very comfortable situation. And then obviously it's the beginning of the partnership between the two of you. So that's the goals. So the recommendations that we would have is that at Scott County, when the child is placed into your home, we would want a comfort call to happen somewhere between 48 and 72 hours. So you've kind of had an opportunity for a kiddo to come into the home, you're kind of understanding a little bit about that kiddo, and you're actually able to give a little bit of a report back to the parents. So that's kind of where the couple of delay of days comes in. It should not be conducted in the presence of the kid. It's to build a relationship just between the parents. And then ultimately, if the birth family is not ready to talk, and like that woman even said, like sometimes the families, they're just not ready, that's definitely okay. But the recommendation would be that you can still make that phone call, and if they don't want to pick it up, if they don't want to talk to you, that you're opening the door to say, you know what, it's okay if you're not ready to talk, but we can talk on a later day whenever you're ready. If you think of questions in the meantime, this is how you can reach me. And so you're not just closing that door off to communication, but you're still opening it. And then the removal of the children is stressful. It can be overwhelming. And so sometimes if talking to the direct caregivers is not an option, you might be able to have we can recommend that maybe you talk to the grandparent. If you know, mom's mom or dad's mom is really close and she's willing to be able to report back and just say, you know what, my daughter right now is not in a state to hear about her own child right now, but you can have a conversation with me. It might be able to link that whole entire circle so that mom still feels comfortable because somebody has at least had contact and they know where their child and their grandchild physically is. Bear with, it's a little slow. There we go. So we have a couple of options here at Scott County of how we would think of a comfort call happening. The first would be that the foster family can just initiate the call right away to the actual to the parents. to the primary caregivers, whoever that was. And then after the child is settled at foster care, there could be a separate option. These would all be options, I should preface and say, these would all be options that the child protection worker is going to guide you with. So they're going to have an established relationship with that primary caregiver that the child was removed from. So they should be able to say, okay, from the little bit of interaction I have, I think option A, B, or C would be a good one. But their interactions could be very, very limited as well. So some of it, we might say, okay, option A is the best route. You're going to call and you're going to initiate that phone call to the parents. And it might not go as the way we expected, which is okay. And we'll give you kind of tips on how to handle those situations. But the child protection worker will guide you. So if they feel that you calling the parents directly is not the best option, they might say, after a couple of days have passed, that they will do a 3-way call. And so it would just be that all 3 of you are on the phone together, and give the parent a call and kind of have a conversation that way. The other way, the final way, would be that the child protection worker or the placing worker would physically be with the parent, and they would end up calling you. So they would be together, and then they would call the foster provider, so that they have their worker in the presence, kind of as that comfort for them. So those would be one of the 3 options that we'd probably guide you to call. And Jackie's going to take over with your tips. I have been.
Alrighty. Some tips for all you foster parents out there. You're going to start the call by introducing yourself, explaining why you're calling, and tell the parents a little bit about you and your family. For example, how long you've been a foster parent, what activities and hobbies your family enjoys. Maybe describe a typical day in your house, in your home. I'm not going to worry about that. Ask any questions that you would like to know about their child. For example, what is a child's favorite food? Do they have a favorite toy or game they like to play? What do you do to comfort the child? Do they have a nickname? If it's a baby, what type of formula do they prefer? Are they on solid foods yet? What's their doctor's name? Any type of allergies that they have that you need to know about? I'm just not worried about that. To be continued, tell parents how their first few days and nights went. You can tell the parents the plan for the child and youth when they go back to school or the daycare.
Just because that little thing was up.
And then again, this phone call is really meant to be helpful for everyone. So if it's not going well, like Molly had said, it's okay to end the call. Tell them why you called and say, you hope you can talk again in the future. Then make sure you tell the caseworker how it went. So now is the fun part. Nancy and I are going to demonstrate a couple different comfort calls for you. We're going to be center stage and let's see how this goes. I need my prop.
Ring, ring.
Hello?
Yeah, this is Nancy. I'm supposed to give you a call.
Nancy, who?
Well, I'm the one who's parenting your kids when you're not.
Oh my God, you're the foster parent?
Well, yeah, I'm doing everything that you're not doing. So I was told to give you a call.
What? Well, I don't want to talk to you.
So everybody gets this is not the way to start a comfort call to foster parents or to bio parents. Questions about how that scenario went?
Anything she could have done differently? Or...
We have another scenario we'll try for you. You can let us know if this one goes a little bit better. Ring, ring.
Hello?
Hi, is this Jenny?
Yes, it is.
Well, hi Jenny, my name is Nancy. I'm the foster parent for Anna and Ryan.
You have my babies?
I do, and my husband and I are so glad that they are in our home.
How are they?
Oh, they are doing fantastic here.
I miss them already.
Oh, I'm sure you do. Know that we will take excellent care of them.
Okay, what are they doing?
Well, I have to tell you, your daughter Anna, she loves the dog that we have at our house.
But you don't understand. Anna's allergic to puppies.
She's allergic. I
Yes,
haven't
yes.
noticed.
Did they not tell you that?
No, I didn't get that information. What can I do for her
You
if
know, she
she's
just needs some Benadryl and then she'll stop sneezing.
Okay, I haven't seen any reaction yet, but I will keep an eye out for that.
Okay.
Thank you so much for giving that information to me.
You're welcome. Do you know anything about being a foster parent?
You know, I have been a foster parent for years. We have had many children in our home, and we just thoroughly enjoy being able to help out when you're getting better now.
Did those children go back to their mom?
Yep, some of them did, absolutely. Yeah, we haven't adopted any children. We're just caring for them for temporary basis. So I just have a question for you. When your
Okay.
kids are upset, you know, how do you try to calm them down?
Oh gosh, you know what? When they just start crying or like beating up on each other, I usually just take a drink.
So this is just our pause in the conversation. This is all Jackie's doing. She loves doing skits. But I have to tell you, she said that when we were practicing. I used to be a licensed foster parent, and I had no idea how I would have responded to a mom saying, well, I just drink when the kids are driving me crazy.
I do too.
So what's your choice? Whiskey? No. But we just wanted to point out you might not know all of the answers, and that's okay. You know, you don't have to reaffirm, oh, that's a great idea, or oh, I can't believe you ever did that. But maybe you could have a conversation with the case manager, share that information with them, and maybe between the three of you, you can come up with some other strategies that BioMom can use when the kiddos come back into her care. So questions about that? Do you want to
Should we
go?
continue? Yeah.
Okay, we'll unpause. Yeah. All right, well, I was just wondering if there's anything you'd like me to know about you.
About me?
Well, yeah, tell me a little bit about yourself.
I'm single. I don't have a boyfriend.
Okay.
I guess I drink too much. I'm going to treatment. I'm going to get better. I'm going to get better.
Oh, that's fantastic. It sounds to me like you're in the right place, right where you need to be right
I
now.
guess so.
Well, great. Well, I'm wondering if there would be a good time that I could call you back so we could talk
You're
some
going to
more.
call me back?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Could you give me your phone
Yes.
number again, and I'll just confirm that?
Yeah, okay, but the thing is, I can only call on the phone on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1:15 to 1:30.
Oh, sure.
Does
I
that
can
work with
certainly
you?
make that
Okay,
work.
thank you.
Absolutely. Would you like my phone number if there's a time you'd like to call me?
I would. And can you send me pictures of Anna and Ryan?
I absolutely
Okay.
can do that.
And I
Jen,
might send you a selfie of me. Is that okay?
that would be great. I will share it with them. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
talking with me.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Nancy.
That might be a way of conversation.
Excellent job, ladies.
All right, so the next part is around the placing workers' jobs. As most of you know, if you've ever had a placement, the placing workers, well, usually actually the licensing workers facilitate arranging the placement, but then most of your communication is done with the placement workers. So what will happen is you will have a child in your home, and the placing workers will meet with the parents and kind of talk to them about what that comfort call will look like. They'll kind of give the parents some suggestions about like what are some of the questions that the foster parent might want to know about your child. We'll kind of talk to parents about making sure they're appropriate, making sure they're, you know, able to have that conversation with foster parents, because we would try to avoid arranging that if we didn't think it was going to go well, or we would do one of those other options, which would be, you know, sitting down with either the foster parent to make that phone call, or more likely, I would say we would sit down with the parent and reach out directly to the foster parent to communicate that phone call together. I think in talking to the placing workers, I think they're mostly encouraged and excited about the comfort call. I think most of the parents that we work with really want to be able to bridge that gap. They want to hear from foster parents, to be able to just feel
grounded, like their kids are okay, to be able to share information about their kids so that foster parents can better meet their needs. So those are some of the things that will initially happen within those placements. Let's see. So if it's the foster parent that's going to be placing the phone call to the birth parent, we'll just make sure that the parents have a phone number to be able to use. I know some of our parents also don't always have phone numbers. Sometimes they have really limited access to phones. So those are also cases where we would try to intervene and try to make that actually be able to happen by us kind of hand-holding that situation. Yeah, some of the other things that we talked about are what was already mentioned. We just want to make sure that the information that's needed by foster parents is provided by the parents. So if you guys have a comfort call and you don't really get the information that's needed from the parents, we would just ask that you contact the placing worker to ask those questions directly, such as, you know, information about allergies, medical care, medical clinics, any kind of behaviors that you're seeing with kids. We just want to make sure that those questions are answered. So facilitating that with the placing worker would be the next step. And then ultimately the hope would be that, I don't know that we discussed it yet, but the next step would be arranging a face-to-face meeting with the birth parent and the placing worker and the foster parent. And that's kind of where we hope to, I guess, bridge that gap and facilitate working together in a cooperative way throughout the life of the case. So I have 2 placing workers here tonight that are super excited about answering any questions that foster parents might have about this. Kelsey and Nikki are right in the back row. So if you guys have any things that you're thinking about right now that you have questions, feel free to ask those. Otherwise, I guess I forgot to change the slide.
Oh, it didn't work. Tap the screen.
Tap this screen.
Yep, it'll wake up.
Oh, this screen.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing it. Oh, we're behind.
Oh, we'll do one more demonstration after.
In conclusion.
No, not yet.
Oh. Oh. Where are we at? So were you ending?
Nope, there's another demonstration. One more before that, I think. Is that,
That's
did
the
you get to
only
cover
one. Mm-hmm.
all of that stuff? Okay.
Yep. So it is the next one. Nope. Oh, it's behind.
It's not.
So are you guys?
Were there any folks that had questions for the workers that are here? Things you can think of?
Your stand up even like 48 to 72 hours so that you have information to give the parents, but as a provider, it'd be nice to even do it sooner, especially if you have an infant to know like food allergies and formula. You know, the last time I had a baby, I had no idea if it had milk or formula or how often, you know, just and putting down for a nap, just those simple things would be really great. Can you contact sooner or do you really want to wait for that 48 hours?
I would think that would be a great question to have for the worker.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's really too bad about your experience. I mean, ideally, those kind of questions should be answered right when the child is
I do
placed.
emergency placements, so that's fine.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, yes, I think as soon as you know who the worker is, if it was like an emergency placement, as soon as you are aware, I would just ask, can I arrange that comfort call? There's a lot of questions that I have.
Okay.
And the placing worker, I'm sure, is more than willing to help arrange that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think often that would be totally fine.
Almost easier to, when the kids do get there, making that contact right away. You know, we just kind of put the 48, 72 hours because court obviously happens in those 72 hours. So that kind of gives us a nice cushion of if this call can't happen right away when the kids are placed, like we still have these few days to make that call. But ultimately, things I'm getting from workers is like they want this to happen as soon as possible also to begin to bridge that communication.
So if this call is supposed to happen between us and the parents,
Can I just reiterate the question quick? So this is being videotaped. and the questions can't be heard from out here. So just for the question and answer, it was if the comfort call could happen quicker than the 48 to 72 hours. And the answer, especially in emergency placement, is yes, let's try to reach out to the placing worker and see if we can get some really vital answers in regards to, formula and allergies, really important stuff, especially in those emergency situations. So yes, get in touch with our agency if you think it's necessary to have that quicker. Sorry.
So this call is supposed to be between us and the parents and not with the children present. We generally take older kids, generally all of the kids we take who's speaking. I can't imagine talking to a parent and them not wanting to speak to their child, and yet this call is supposed to be between us and them. What do we do when they insist, can I talk to my child? Do we say yes? I mean, generally speaking, as parents talk to us, they're talking to their kids, like.
I guess my suggestion for that would be,
So question is, what do you do when a parent insists that they want to talk to their child, since it's intended to be between parent and foster parent?
so the guidelines for that are really that this specific phone call is supposed to be with parent and foster parent and not with children. And I think that's because there's a lot of questions that they want to make sure are answered within that first conversation. But like the hope would be during that first conversation, I guess either you set up a time for the child to talk to the parent at the end of that phone call, or like another time for that to happen the next day, or I guess whatever works out in schedules. Because part of this hope is that this kind of gap that we're bridging is so that visitation planning and phone call planning can happen a little easier than waiting for the placement worker to like make all of those arrangements, which sometimes takes a long time for placement workers. The initial placements and all of the things that we have responsibility for with court and out-of-home plans, it's all so much loaded on the placing worker at one time that it's really hard for us to get to everything. So like ideally, you come up with that plan or ideas for that plan within that first phone call, and then you share that with the placing worker. And most of the time, the placing worker will probably be appreciative that you had that conversation and can share what might work out for phone calls between the parent and the child within your home. So did that answer?
Yeah, I guess it just, I'm just feeling like if we're trying to have a comforting phone call between us and the parents, and then they ask to speak to their child, and we're saying, no, that's
So-
gonna kind of eliminate that whole comfort aspect.
And I wouldn't-
They're gonna be like, what, I can't talk to my kid?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say no. I would say, yep, let's plan for that. But can we get through a few questions first? And then as soon as we're done getting those questions answered, I would love to arrange that and just kind of, it literally could be at the end of the phone call if that's what works best.
So it's okay, like at the end of the call, to be like, yeah, let me, after we have this conversation at the end, let me hand you to.
I think that's fine. hmm
I-
With older kids especially, I think for younger kids it's maybe like better to set it up and kind of prepare kids. But if they're, are you teenagers or like 12 and older? Or?
Typically we take, right now we've got youngers, but usually we take 6 and up.
Okay.
So that's kind of usually our age range. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, like I said, the suggestion would be to get through for sure what you need to in order to make sure that you're able to meet the child's needs and do that dual parenting. Because it's really not just meant for the parent to feel better because they talk to their child. It's really to bridge that gap and have people working together. Do you have any other thoughts on that?
I'm just wondering if there would ever be a time that the workers might give some direction, because of the contact they've had with the parents, that they, and maybe have already told the parents, like, we already have a plan for when the contact is gonna happen, so if they bring it up, like, defer
Yep.
back to the worker or something like that.
I think that's also a fine answer. When like the placing worker is calling the foster parent to share the phone number of the bio parent, that's kind of a conversation that can happen at that time too. So this is, a little bit about the parent. Here's their phone number. I think when you guys call, they're going to ask to speak their child right away. Like we can kind of share some of those details and help foster parents be more prepared for those phone calls.
A question.
Mm-hmm.
We typically have taken older kids and
Okay.
they have cell phones.
Sure.
So how does that enter into this? Because because that's a whole different ballgame.
It is. So are you talking, so
Kid
to
just needs
repeat the
child comes with a cell
question.
phone. Child comes with a cell phone, obviously has mom, dad's, whoever's numbers.
Yeah.
You can't just say, hey, hand me over your phone, that's not gonna go over so well.
Right.
So, have you thought about,
So the question is just about, again, with older children that have cell phones, and how do we want foster parents to handle that? I mean, I think usually placement workers are talking to foster parents about what they want that contact to look like. I think it is a little trickier with teenagers who have cell phones. The most we can do is give them guidance about, time frames that it's okay for calling. I think we also, in working with the biological parents, we're telling them what kind of contact they should and shouldn't be having. I think that's kind of a case-by-case basis for some of that, and I would, again, refer you to whoever the placing worker is in those situations to kind of be able to answer that question a little bit more directly, because I do think it depends on the case, depends on the situation, depends on what kind of conversations they're having, and those are all depending on why they're in foster care. So it's a little bit case by case for that answer. Would you guys have anything else to say about that specific circumstance?
yeah, I think it depends on.
Yeah. I mean, I still think you still have the comfort call between the foster parent and the parent, because that's the exchange of information and the development of a relationship. And then you might also be having conversations about how was the phone calls or cell phone calls with parent and child going to happen. So, any other thoughts or questions?
Well, this has been going on in other states, so what are the statistics are they collecting any statistics on how this worked, or when it didn't work, and what were the scenarios that didn't work well?
I don't know that we have statistics on that. I know we've got a lot of stories for sure that have been shared about how helpful it's been for cases. I think, do you have a deeper question within that broad question?
I'm just wondering, there will be a percentage of parents that will be extremely hostile, even after 72 hours.
Yeah.
And then where are there, if you don't learn from that, and you don't have different techniques to deal with that, and you kind of know it's coming, so you can deal with it up front instead of being shocked.
Sure.
Instead of the nice scenario you were talking up here. Some cases,
So
they're not always played out that nicely, right?
usually the placing worker is going to know if that phone call is going to go well or not. You're going to have some ideas for what this parent is going through. If they're using and they're hostile, more than likely we will be part of that phone call, or we will be trying to arrange it, and it's not going to happen because the parent's not answering or doesn't have a phone, or there's going to be things like that are in place that we will help facilitate.
Just to add to it, on this resource guide that you have, at the top, well, it's the only one that has the QPI symbol at the bottom. It does talk about if you get kind of that hostile parent that you're talking about, and the conversation, if you look kind of about 3/4 of the way down, it says for foster parents, what to do when the phone call becomes unhelpful. It gives tips right there as well, about how do you try to end that conversation. If it's going nowhere, if it starts to turn negative, if it's not being helpful for either party, things are just getting off track and it's not really going the way it's supposed to or anticipated to, for whatever the reason may be. How do you end that call politely? And again, just say, maybe not, now is not the best time to have this conversation. However, I would be open to having a conversation down the road if you have more questions. So you can open the door for future conversation, but kind of shut down what's not being helpful right in that moment. And that is kind of the bottom line. It's supposed to be helpful. It's supposed to be a good tool. And if you do start to notice that it's going drastically wrong, like you do have permission to say, you know what, this might not be a good time to have this conversation. If you do have to take that route, I would then recommend calling the agency and just talking to the placement worker and said, you know, hey, I wanted to reach out on such and such date. I tried to do the comfort call to this foster parent, and this is kind of where the conversation went. And I thought it was just best to end it at that time. Just so they kind of have the knowledge then about, okay, how are we going to build that relationship better going forward? But again, when you shut it down, just try to open it back up for the possibility of more conversations, not just saying, you know, we're done. You don't need to call me anymore. Like, that's not going to be helpful either. So,
I mean, just in general, I can speak to doing child protection casework for 14 years, and it's the rare occasion, it's the rare parent that is going to be hostile. Most of them, if they're using, they're probably not going to answer their phone, or they don't have a phone. I mean, it's really the rare occasion. And you guys, I don't know if you can speak to that more, but I feel like 95% of our parents are going to appreciate this phone call and be appropriate.
And I would also just like to reiterate that like we're also doing work with the parents like before this call happens, so they know what to expect during this call. You know, they know our bottom lines as the agency, and obviously, you know, you are going to have those few parents who you can tell them things till you're blue in the face and they don't care. But just know that that upfront work, like we are going to do, we're going to try and to bridge that. And like if we don't feel like it's going to be helpful, then we're not going to recommend it, or we're going to recommend going a different direction, or also prepping you guys as foster parents of, yeah, I'm not sure how this is going to go. Like I suggest this, this, and this. This is what I found when working with the parent that worked well.
So just to reiterate that the worker's doing some work with the parents ahead of time as well.
Yep, yep. Anything else people can think of? Otherwise, I might put Nikki on the spot. Can I put you on the spot? Yeah. Okay, so Nikki has had one or a few placements where she has done some bridging the gap between parent and foster parent. I was wondering if you could just share maybe just a little bit about how that went or kind of what you did. And you can actually, yes, come up here so people can hear.
Yeah, so I have had a couple. When I've done it, I didn't know of the term comfort call, but we did try out an introductory meeting actually with Nikki Vilter, and that was super helpful for the parents that were placed there, and they developed a really good relationship, and it was just made the case go a lot smoother. She was amazing. And that was more so doing an introductory meeting, but I think having this comfort call would make things even better. And it's just, I've even had a family where I did a meeting like this to have an introductory meeting, and that client was a little more hostile, but even with that, it was definitely really helpful for her. And she was totally appropriate during the meeting, and gave a lot of information about her kids that she wanted the foster parent to know. So I think it helps build parents up a little bit and gives them the opportunity to give you guys some answers, and it can be better than coming from the placing worker.
How did the parents receive that? Like what did they kind of get out of that interaction?
They liked having the opportunity to share, and I know then it just made things a lot easier for everyone, and in that case they were able to see their kids more often, and yeah.
I just want to add that so we had a meeting and not a comfort call.
Yeah.
But I love that because I ended up doing the visitations with the parents twice a week after that. But it was so nice to have Nikki there and meeting the parents for the first time. Especially down the road when we had to do the visits and stuff. It was I really appreciated that. And that was another emergency placement, so the parents could bring all of the clothes and belongings and all that to that meeting too. But
Yeah.
I don't know, I almost think like in some situations a meeting with the social worker would be
Oh. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, and that's something I think we're hoping to move to. This is where a starting point. I hadn't heard about the comfort call term. I was just trying that out because I think it just helps everyone work together, and you don't have to end up supervising visits. Nikki was amazing in that case, that Nikki, as a foster parent, but just having more communication or figuring out what works best for everyone for phone calls instead of having to go, oh, I have to talk to the place, going back and forth. And yeah, it helps builds the parents' trust too, because it can be really scary. So,
For sure.
yeah, thanks for that feedback. That's good to hear.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have questions for Nikki about that? I was just going to add that what you said about having a meeting is like really the next stage in this process, the QPI process. The comfort call is the first part of that. And then the hope is that there is we started titling it a meet and greet, where the placing worker and foster parent and parent do have a face-to-face meeting. And then from there, it's kind of like whatever is able to happen. Like ideally, like we would like to see the possibility of foster parents supervising those visits, but that obviously is kind of dependent on the relationship that is formed, safety, and kind of what we have in place for our expectations for visits as well. So we do hope that the comfort call is the first step and that it does grow from there. And like in that case that they just referenced, it grew really well and went really well. So that was a nice one to share. So I don't know if anybody has anything else that they had questions about or worries or just putting thoughts out there if you have anything else. Or we can just kind of, I don't know if you have other.
Yep. Demonstration.
Oh, okay.
Anna and I are going to kind of talk about your reference that says Google Voice on the top. Just to maybe explain the other ones that we have here. Part of your kind of packet of information, I think it's good just to point everything out. We talked about kind of that piece, the reference where it talked about what do you do if a call's not going well. We've talked a lot about the comfort call in general and questions to be asking. So you'll see two other references that you had picked up. One says questions for biological parents. These would be the questions that you would be asking the parents. So kind of asking about, do they have medications, allergies, kind of what's their favorite food, things to that effect, to try to gather information from the parents about the child. Questions for the foster parents, that is what the placing worker could possibly be talking to the parent about. So you might notice some of these questions being asked of you. They could say, you can ask them how long they've been doing foster care. I think you probably noticed that in Jackie and Nancy's skit, that was one of the questions. They could ask about your daily routine, who's all in your house, things like that. So those could be some of the questions that the placing workers are kind of saying, yeah, you can have that conversation. You can ask the foster parents, that's okay. So those were those two. And then Google Voice is something that we wanted to bring up. And she's listening. So there, I don't want this to worry you by any means, because I would say about 99.99% of the time this should not be a worry or concern. But Google Voice has an option. If you have a Gmail account, you can create yourself what's called a Google number. And the Google number is pretty cool. We tested it out in our own office to try to actually see what it looks like. So we were going to show you guys as well. But you have to have a Gmail account. You have to have a Google account. And then what you're able to do is you're able to create your phone number. And it's called your Google number. And the Google number can sync to your own device that you have. So what ends up happening is if you want to call a parent or text a parent, you could have the capability of doing it through your Google number, but every call and every text you make is actually going to be on your own physical device. It's just that you don't have to give your own personal number out. You could give them your Google number, and then when they call your Google number, we can show you kind of what it sounds like on the other end and what it looks like. So these are instructions. If we thought that there would be a danger or a harm for any foster parent to give out their number to a parent, the placing worker is going to know that and they are going to inform you. What ends up happening in our process, if you haven't caught it, is that the placing worker is going to contact you and say, hey, little Joey's in your house. Here is the contact information for the parent, and this is the best way that you can contact them. And they're going to say, call them directly. Let's do a 3-way call, or I'm going to be with that bio parent as we call you. So they're going to give you that option. They're going to tell you that right up front. And if they felt that you should not call them for any reason or give out your personal information, that's something that's on the front end is we're going to protect that, and we're going to let you know. This is not a family that you should be contacting. So Anna has created an account. We can use this, I think. And so bear with us, going to try to put our phones on speakerphone when it happens. And she's going to give my phone a call so that you guys kind of know what it sounds like. This would be if you were the foster parent and decided to call me parent, this is what I would hear on my end.
And the cool thing about this is it's just a normal number. It has a Minnesota area code. And did you say it syncs up with all your contacts? You can just find all the contacts in there. So that makes it really easy. Do you want me to try and call?
Yeah.
Put it closer.
Okay. Hello?
Oh,
All right. So that's how that would work if she were to call me. So I'm going to call her now and show you.
Do the regular thing because now I have your number. So before, do you remember when it said like it had
Take
you
me out of your contacts.
say your number?
Delete me out. One more attempt. Delete me. Is that your actual number that popped up?
So Molly, did you create a Google number as well?
I do not.
You did not.
I just have my own number. So it should be your Google number that goes through, right?
Or no, you try and call me.
Okay.
Because if I deleted your number, then it's sorry.
Was this one? Okay.
No.
No? What's your Google number?
Could you call my regular number? Since I deleted you, so it
No.
wouldn't show up.
I don't have it. Bear with us. I thought we had this down pat. Sorry, guys.
Oops.
So is that your Google then?
No.
No. Tell me your
Okay,
Google
well, normally what would happen is if you call the Google number, it will just have you say your name. So who's ever getting it knows who's calling. Does that make sense?
No, it does not.
So does it
Okay.
So here's,
Okay.
I've used it before.
Okay.
So on
Well-
Google Voice, if you're the recipient,
That's
meaning
Google
you're the foster parent in this particular circumstance, and bio mom's calling you, if they're in your phone, you can set up your voice, you can set up your settings in 3 different ways. One, don't get an alert to anybody, just be like a normal phone number. So you have a secondary phone in your phone. And that phone could be your house, your work, your cellular, whatever. Then you can set up the option number 2, which is if they're in my phone book, because Google can read your phone book, don't alert me because I already know who it is because it tells me their name on my screen. Third option, always require them to say Billy Bob, when they're calling in, it's gonna say, okay, please tell me who you are, so that way we can connect the call. And you just say your name, or whatever you're gonna say. Then when you answer the phone, as the foster parent, you answer the phone, so swipe to the right or whatever, answer hello, and then it says, hi, you have a call from Billy Bob. Do you wanna press 1 to accept it, or 2 to send it a voicemail?
Okay, I got it. It sounds exactly like the jail. Yeah.
Hello. Please state your name after the tone, and Google Voice will try to connect you.
Molly. I gotta do yours. And then you gotta put it up here.
So then it shows up like a normal number.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2. To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail.
So what you didn't hear before she hit the actual speakerphone was it said you are receiving a call from Molly. Do you want to accept or do you want to deny? So that is exactly what he was talking about.
Thank you.
But when she calls me, it's like a normal, I just pick up and everything is fine. When I call the Google Voice number, because that's the number that she physically gives me, then I'm going to always be prompted, unless you change your settings, like you said, to say who I am. So you would be able to physically give them your Google Voice number, and then it will sync to your phone. Yeah.
So could that, if, again, kind of, there's a hostile parent that, like, well, why do I have to identify myself every time I want to talk to my kids? Sort of thing, like, could they catch on to that, like, I'm screening their calls, basically?
I mean, if,
I've used it with a foster parent, and maybe they just did a different setting, but that was with an extremely hostile parent, and it worked totally fine. There was no issue, so maybe the foster parent just didn't have them do that, but it was pretty smooth and easy to set up.
yeah, well, and I think honestly, to answer your question, if you were worried about someone being hostile and having to present their name, it does sound like there is a feature on there. And so if you can just change the feature and just give them your Google Voice number, and you never want them to be prompted, then that's definitely a capability that you have. And if you have the phone number, you would be able to put them into your Google contacts, so you could put the parent's name. You're gonna have that first, because you're gonna be the one that's initiating the phone call. So if you take that setting out, there should never be a worry
And
about.
I actually just provided the foster parent's number to the parent. I provided their Google number, but I didn't tell them, this is a fake number, this is
Right.
fake.
And
I
I,
said, here's the number you can contact them on, because some people have multiple numbers, so I didn't feel the need to explain.
yeah, and I don't think you would have to identify this as your Google number if it's something that you wanted to do. And then, yeah, like I said, you would have their information, so it shouldn't be a strange number just popping up. You could add that parent in there.
I've had parents who have a new cell phone every time they call.
Yeah.
We had one who, literally every single time was a new number.
There's definitely parents that will have multiple numbers for sure, and that's just, well, and sometimes it's because they're calling on phones that aren't theirs. They don't have a phone, and so it might be their friends or their moms or their dads or their sisters, whoever they're with at that time, just because it's great that you're able to pick it up though every time for them, even though it's a different number. Because I'm sure it's really stressful for them too, to not be with their kids, and then they're just trying to figure out how to, get a hold of their kids when they have no phone. So I think that's awesome that you're willing to just bear with them on that.
I was just gonna add, I've also used, is it Star 68, Nikki? Or is it last 7? Star 67.
Yep.
Okay, that's one. I've used that multiple times too when you don't know. Well, one of them was a sibling for the one you're talking about, and I didn't want to set up a Google number, but, or if I didn't know what the emergency placements, what situation was like, I just used that.
Yeah, those are really good. She was talking about Star 67, I think it is, or Star, yeah. It's a really good option when you're trying to block your numbered initial. I think the purpose kind of behind this comfort call and bridging this relationship is that it could be ongoing, and that there definitely could be some grace that these parents could be able to contact you as well. So even though you're initiating it, it would be wonderful if it doesn't always have to be just foster parent initiated, that they would also be able to have an opportunity to call you back. And so this is where this can come in. Like if you're super worried about giving your personal out, like I said, I don't want this to scare anybody, and I don't think that you guys should be worried. We've had foster providers that give their numbers out all the time, and there's never a worry. I can see them in this room. They've been doing this for tons of years, and they just give their contacts out. But if it's something that you're worried about, you could give that Google number, and it's not like you're trying to hide your identity, because you're like, yeah, you can reach me. Call me. This is my number, and they're going to have no clue that it's one that's just being routed to your phone, and it's actually through a Google account. The catch is if you don't have a Gmail account, you might have to create one just for this purpose, which it's free to create that. Yeah.
When you get a call through that app, doesn't it alert you that it's through the app, or is it just like a regular call?
It looks like a regular call when she calls me on hers. We can show you what it looks like when it comes through. And like she had said, if you add that parent to your contacts, it will read all those numbers from, like it'll recognize. So even if Phil called your Google number, like it's gonna recognize his number straight from there. So yeah, it'll just look like any old call. You hit your green accept button and you go. You don't have to do anything special, unless you have to accept if you choose the option of identifying themselves.
Do you have to download like a specific Google Voice app or anything? Or is it just...
Did you have to download an app?
I did download the app, but you can also access it on your computer, so then you don't need the app for that.
Oh, yeah. I think you actually open up the physical, when you create the account, you open up the app to call through the app. And so on the instructions, if you were to go through and make your call, you'd click on your app, and the app can sync to all of your contact lists. And so you can call through your Google number, and you can text through your Google number. Yeah, so you text through or you call through the app, correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then also like with Google, because there's Google Drive, Google Photos, Google everything, you can access Google Voice on your computer too. So you could like text through your computer. Yeah. I don't know how calling would work. We haven't tried that out.
So if you have a cellular device only, or a non-cellular device, i.e. like a laptop or tablet or whatever, if you download the app onto your phone, onto your device, or the Chrome extension, then you can make phone calls, receive phone calls right through it, and essentially if you want to give it to the kid and say, hey, here's this tablet or whatever, so that way they can do it, you can do it that way too. You can also say at certain times that it's automatically forwarded to voicemail, to the Google voicemail, which is not your voicemail. So there'll be a certain time frame where you can say after 8 p.m. it doesn't ring. That way if you have...
So for recording purposes, you're saying you have multiple options of calling by using a tablet and or computer. Lots of flexibility. It's great. So that's what that resource kind of is. Just talks about it, gives a couple screenshots about what it would look like and how to call through the app. So we'll just have Gretchen come and wrap up unless anyone has any more burning questions about what Google Voice is. No? Okay. You didn't want to answer those?
No. Okay. All right, so as we've kind of all, I think, commented on, like, we're really working on getting that relationship started. And we're just kind of using these as tools to kind of get those first steps out there. And we like open communication and positive relationships are what kind of our goals are. That's really what we want, because we know kids do really well when the adults have those that are kind of coming together to care for them, or kind of that partnership to kind of come together and parent together. And we are going to want to hear from you, like when you started to try to do these comfort calls, how do they go? Whether it's kind of through the placing workers, if it's through your licensing worker. Hopefully we'll get some foster parent support networks kind of scheduled and be able to come together and talk about talk about the calls there. All of that, we're really interested in that. And if we are then also able to take the next step and get some of those face-to-face meetings happening, we really want to hear kind of how those are going. Because that helps us. Like, what can we learn from things that have gone really well? What can we try to learn from that didn't go so well? So we're all open to that. Any other questions or things that you have tonight? Right now, no? I think, once again, I can't see what, get questions. We want to thank you all for coming. I think we'll hang around a little bit if folks have questions or things that they want to discuss, but we really appreciate you coming out.